Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm here yet again to talk about Baby Reindeer. This is actually a continuation video from the first video called We Need to Talk About Baby Reindeer because I have a lot more to say about this show. Reading everyone's comments has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much, and I hope we can keep this conversation going. I watched the show again, so let's just get into more things because there are a few scenes and sections I didn't talk about. Another moment I loved was the moment where Terry actually broke up with Donnie. I love this argument. I love this conversation. I think she was so in the right, it actually hurts. And it was kind of good to see a character actually hold up a mirror to Donnie and say, hey, you're the one being obsessed also.
It's not perfecting us, it's you.
I feel bad for Terry. She put up with so much trying to make her and Donnie's relationship work, and in the end, he just couldn't let this Martha thing go. He did actually have a stalker, but it's the fact that he could just never switch off. He got absolutely obsessed, and it just consumed his life to a point where it just seemed unhealthy. One of my favorite parts of this show is Donnie's interaction with the police. I found these scenes really humorous, and yes, obviously, the police fumbled the bag here. They did not do their job properly, and it took them ages to actually take action. I 100% agree. But I think there was a really good amount of humor in the fact that we've seen how serious and uncomfortable this stalking is, but hearing Donnie try and describe it, he really doesn't do it justice. You get why the police are sort of like, is that it? Like, I love when he shows that email and it's just the email about eggs or whatever. Absolutely hilarious.
Me emails like all the time.
Are any threatening towards you?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that's particularly threatening.
But this sort of leads to a deeper discussion. I've seen in multiple interviews, Richard Gadd actually talks about the fact that there's an issue with how stalking and harassment is actually handled by the police. You essentially need something violent or flat out abusive to happen, and apparently someone just completely disrupting your life on these micro levels isn't enough to actually have any action take place. He talks in this interview about the fact that stalking can be completely debilitating, but unless there is actually a threat of physical violence that can be proven, you just have to let it carry on, which he finds insane. This also brings me to one of my favorite moments of the season. I do feel like the last 2 or 3 episodes do take a slight dip in quality, and I'll get to that later in the video. However, one of my favorite moments from these 3 episodes is when Donnie actually tries to set Martha up. There are so many conflicting emotions here. Yes, Martha has been an absolute nutcase. She started harassing his parents. She's totally in the wrong, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel some empathy here when he came up to her and started lying to her and telling her what she wanted to hear. Telling her that he was going to hang up her curtains and he wanted her to send a filthy fucking email of what she was going to do to him. I felt bad for her. And watching her like scurry away to write some horny, filthy smut, like, yeah, I felt a bit bad. And that's one of the great things about this show is you are constantly kind of changing allegiances. You feel tons of pity for all these characters, but also tons of frustration. I get frustrated with Martha when she can't just let things go, when Donnie clearly verbalizes to her what he needs from her. And I feel bad for Donnie given everything he goes to, but at the same time, these two characters completely self-sabotage at different points. I love the following moment when he actually goes to the police to get her in trouble, and it backfires completely and he flops, and he actually gets in trouble because she's been recording him, and he actually gets told off for trying to entrap her. In terms of character, Ryan, this is a moment where I was a bit disappointed with the show. The fact that he was surprised and was like, what do you mean I'm on the same level of Martha? What do you mean? You're comparing me to her? I feel like Donnie was a smart enough character to know he completely fucked up there and not be surprised with the way the police were handling it. Yes, we get why Donnie did what he did, but he did a stupid fucking thing. He did actually try and blackmail her, and it completely misfired. I did find it a weird character moment that he actually couldn't wrap his head around the fact that the police were also concerned with his behavior. Because yes, all of it stacked against him doesn't look good, similar to all of it stacked against Martha does not look good. Another moment I actually really want to talk about is the very ending when he goes back to his abuser, the man that abused him in episode 4. I actually want your opinion, like my audience. I want your opinion on what you think that scene meant, why he went back, why he said yes to working on more shows with him, and whether we're meant to take that on surface level, whether we're meant to take that literally or not. To me, what that sequence felt like is it was showing how quickly he can fall back into being a victim of abuse, fall back into this toxic cycle with this guy that abused him, with the man that assaulted him and has been the source of all this mental trauma. The moment he starts hanging out with him again, he falls back into familiar habits of people pleasing, saying yes to things he shouldn't, saying yes to things he knows aren't right. To me, what it felt like is Donnie basically stepped back into who he used to be and started placating this abuser. And once he left his house, he went, oh, of course I'm not going to work on his show. What am I thinking? Oh my God, I'm so disappointed with myself that I get swayed that easily. So that was my view of the situation. Yes, he said yes in the moment to working on the show and starting back up a relationship with him, but in reality, he's not going to follow through with that, and he just people pleased for a moment. However, it could be viewed the other way, that he is actually going to go back to work for him, in which case it's an absolutely devastating statement of trauma bonding and the way victims of abuse just keep running back to the same familiar situation. People at home, let me know what you think it was. I just read it as this temporary moment of he let his principles slip and his boundaries slip yet again. However, it could actually be that he is committing to working on a show with his abuser. Now, I did mention that I was a bit let down with the last 2 and 3 episodes, and I want to get into why. The reason for that is I think the first 3 to 4 episodes were so subtly communicated, and I thought the narration did a really good job of communicating the things that weren't so subtle. And I feel like the last 2 or 3 episodes really got a bit heavy-handed and spelled it out for everyone in the audience. Particularly the moment where he has his stand-up comedy breakthrough. Now, I know this is an emotionally powerful, triumphant moment, and there are a few quotes here and there in that sequence that I absolutely adore. However, I guess as an audience member, I struggled a bit because I feel like we already knew all this stuff about Donnie previously. These didn't feel like new revelations. Now, I know his narration is obviously omniscient, right? It's from the future looking back on the situation. I do understand that. I feel like his stand-up viral moment would have been so much more powerful if we didn't already know all these lessons he's learned. He is consistently throughout the season saying that, oh, I'm letting my boundaries be violated. I knew it was wrong, but I keep going back. I feel like throughout the series, his inner monologue does a really good job of explaining how multifaceted all these issues are for him. And I feel like that stand-up sequence just felt like it was really spelling it out for the audience at home. And on top of that, I actually think it betrays the real life story a bit. So I'm not sure if you guys know this, but in real life, this is actually a deviation. This did not happen. He didn't have a moment where he got on stage and then someone recorded him having a bit of a breakthrough, whatever you want to call it, and he went viral. That was actually a fictionalized sequence for this show. What happened in real life is the abuse happened, the stalking situation happened, and then he turned it into a powerful one-man show art piece called Baby Reindeer, which is basically this show that we've seen. And yes, maybe the real life version where he just makes a really well-constructed, intentional play isn't as like powerful as like a Hollywood TV show movie moment. To me, it feels like a more powerful moment. You know, he took his pain, he took his trauma, he turned it into a transformative piece of art that made him super successful, super famous, and eventually led to him creating a show that has led to a discussion about male assault. Whereas what we are presented in the TV show is basically an accident. He has a breakdown on stage, someone happens to be filming it, and then it goes viral. It felt a bit too easy and a bit too Hollywood for me when I watched it, but I went, oh, that must have been what actually happened in real life. Then when checking in on this, turns out it didn't happen in real life. And again, what happened in real life is he made that show. I know this is a more easy to digest plot point for mainstream audiences, but I just feel like the real life version is a more powerful moment, a more triumphant moment, like really someone intentionally turning the tables on their painful experiences. Now, I do just want to talk about the things we find out about Martha as the show goes on. We find out that she's a product of a domestically abusive household or a really painful childhood. Now, to be honest, as an observant audience member, and I feel like most of you at home probably got this was pretty clear from early stages. Even just calling him Baby Reindeer, she had this really weird maternal but sexual dynamic with Donnie. She would either be talking to him like a motherly figure, giving him like really maternal words of affirmation, or sexually harassing him. And I feel like that was really clear of some deep childhood trauma. But on top of that, the whole Baby Reindeer name feels like this weird infantilization, and it's doubly concerning when she does things like grope his cock against his will. To me, the show peaked when she was sentenced. That was the most emotional moment in the show for me. You could see that he still has empathy for her despite all her shortcomings, despite all her mistakes. And as an audience, I don't know about you guys, I felt really bad for her. I know I shouldn't, but hearing her go, oh, you're my baby reindeer. My baby reindeer, are you really going to send me away? I felt awful. Like, it just seems like someone who so clearly wants to be loved loved and has just never been able to get it right. And yes, don't get it twisted, she gets violent in the face of rejection. She beats up Terry, like that was heinous and awful. But in terms of how she treats Donnie, it's this really painful thing of like, if they could just give each other what they wanted, they might actually have got along. Look, I had a comment in my comment section that gave me some pause, but I do just want to talk about it. Basically, this comment was talking about the idea that like, if Martha was attractive in the way that Donnie likes, would he have put up with this more? Would he have actually wanted to date her? I can't speak to that fully because there is that section where he starts beating off to her, but it's only in private. And similar to Terry, he is scared to show Martha off. It's actually a really interesting question to ask. If he had actually returned any of these romantic feelings and actually acted on any of these clear sexual impulses he did have for her at different points, would she have gone to the lengths she did? Again, not victim blaming, merely just wondering. It's of my opinion that Martha has some sweet intentions and there is good in her, but she just can't help but resort to these really toxic patterns if something just doesn't go her way. You see how quickly she flips on a dime. I've also seen a few people mention Fleabag, which I mentioned in my previous video. If you liked Baby Reindeer, definitely check out Fleabag. Also, the show I May Destroy You is a fantastic look at similar types of assault that are explored in Baby Reindeer, so definitely check that show out. I absolutely love this section where he's listening to her positive words of affirmation, because as an audience member, you're sitting there and you know she's off her rocker, you know she's nuts, but you're hearing her say that she likes his jawline and she likes how funny he is and she loves that he looks good in red and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, that probably would be absolutely lovely to hear in your ears all the time. Like, most married couples don't even talk to each other with that much sweetness the way Martha was talking about Donnie, and you get why he's a bit attached to her. And that's why I love this idea that like there clearly was some weird friendship potential in there or some tiny amount of romantic potential in there, but it just can't happen. They can't do it to each other. They drive each other nuts and it'll never work. And that was the most interesting idea to me, was just this idea that they're intrinsically linked for the rest of their lives. And he'll sit there and he'll go back to her nude photo to beat off sometimes, and he'll sit there and he'll listen to her words of affirmation, but he can never see her again because it just opens himself up to more abuse. And that's why similarly, he might be going back to that abuser because he wants to believe that someone believes in his show, and then he realizes, oh, actually, no, he doesn't. He just wants to sleep with me. Yeah, the only real big issues I have with this show are just these kind of hand-holding moments. It is that sequence where he has the monologue in front of the audience. I know it's powerful. I know it's a great performance. I know a lot of things are said there that are really great, but it just spelled out a few things at a few different points that I feel like, for me as an audience member, I felt like had already been subtly communicated in much stronger ways. On top of that, similarly, as much as I love the Terry fight where she breaks up with him because of the fact that he never reported her assault and the fact that he blackmailed Martha, when she's breaking up with him, she literally says, no, this isn't Martha's fault, it's your fault. I'm not breaking up with you because of Martha, I'm breaking up with you because of you. And it's said a few too many times to the point where I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, I get it. They're both similar and they both have trauma and they both have unhealthy habits and obsessions with each other. I feel like it was much more subtly communicated in those first 5 episodes, particularly episode 5, where after he's actually escaped Martha for a bit, he starts resorting to beating off to her photos and getting attached to her, and she's still in his brain a bit. I feel like that was the moment where it was really well communicated. I just feel like these moments after were a bit too hand-holding. Now, I just want to follow up from my previous video a bit. I had a few comments pushing back on the fact that I said the idea was a bit on the nose about like, oh, he's turned into Martha. Okay, guys, I did not literally mean like, oh, I feel like he's going to turn into a stalker and start stalking this bar guy or anything. I just felt like as an audience member, I already had a really strong idea that he empathized with Martha, that he realized he was quite similar to Martha, and he knew that Martha was a product of her upbringing, and he realized that he had fallen into those same similar patterns. And I just feel like having the exact scenario play out where he offered her a cup of tea and now he's been offered a beer was just a bit like, okay, like I get it. That's all. I didn't think it was like literally saying like, oh, he's going to turn into a crazy stalker. I just thought it lacked subtlety again compared to those first 4 to 5 episodes. But again, these are like minor complaints. Overall, this show's still like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. Like, this is fucking unreal. And again, I have to give mad props to Netflix for being so brave to put out something this hard as nails, this out there. this confronting. Again, episode 4 is one of the most intense episodes of TV I think I've ever seen, and I absolutely adore the first 5 episodes of this show as a whole. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you disagree. I'm happy to open up the comment section completely. I'll reply to as many as I can. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sure there's more things I've going to talk about in this. I might even do a part 3 or something down the line. Thank you so much for watching. Have a lovely day.